Hi children, good morning. I welcome all students of grade 11 to today's offline video class. Today what we are going to see, lesson 2, we are not afraid to die if we can all be together. This is the title of the second lesson, children. So far now we have covered the first lesson as well as the first poem. In today's video class, I am going to discuss with you the important message, theme, moral of the second lesson. That is entitled as "We are not afraid to die if we can all be together." Listen to me very carefully, children. As it is an offline video class, we have changed this mode from online to offline for your convenience only. So try to make use of these things. Whenever you have free time, view and review and then catch the points which has been discussed with you. Okay, fine. Actually, this lesson, it tells about the extreme bravery and skill exhibited by the narrator and his family in a war with water and the waves for existence. Here, war with water means sea voyage. They were ready to go for world voyage, which was already undertaken by James Cook in 1768. Actually, it is a risky voyage, but the narrator and his family were very ready to go for such a risky voyage. So, the story is about the positive attitude and endurance shown by the courageous family of the author in the face of the storm that had emerged their survival. And more than that, children, one more information. The story is about a family which undertakes a 3-year-long sea voyage. They face a lot of problems, even death on their way, but they never lose their hope. It is their optimism, courage, and the board of togetherness that helps them fight the direst stress and overcome all the odds. So this is something about this story. So this story talks about the courageous attempt made by the writer as well as his family to go for sea voyage around the world. Okay, you should know the characters involved. You should know the characters involved in this story. The narrator, actually captain of the ship. He is the captain of the ship. Then Mary, wife of the narrator. Jonathan, his only son, their son, and Susanne, their daughter. So all these four, besides Larry Vigil is an American crewman hired from Cape Town. Larry Vigil. And then one more character, Hab Segia, Swiss crewman hired from Cape Town. So altogether the narrator, his wife, his son, his daughter, and 2 other crewmen. So all these together were the character of this story. Okay, children, now with this basic idea, let me explain or let me give you a few words about the author. The narrator, that is Gordon Cook, and his family is a descendant of Captain James Cook, whose round the earth voyage is very popular in history. All men are dreamers, but few are able to pursue their dreams successfully. Everyone wants to have dreams. You may have your own dream, children, in your life. You want to become so and so. I want to go around the world through voyage. I want to reach the moon. I want to go to Mars. So many ambitions and hopes and dreams you may have in your mind. Nothing is wrong in it. But how many of you are chasing your dream? How many of you are pursuing your dreams successfully? That is the greatest things. Generally, failures are left unmentioned in the history. But the indomitable courage, spirit, love, and loyalty displayed by the narrator Gordon Cook and his family, in their bold adventure, made their voyage a very special. That's very important. Everyone likes to go for voyage. Voyage means making travel in the ship on the sea. Okay, that's a voyage generally. The voyage, where it started, how many of them took part in the voyage, why they decided to go around the world, what are all the factors which motivate them to go for such things, what are all the factors which motivated them to take such a great risk, we will deal. I will explain all these things in detail. Okay, children? Ready? I would like to read the passage line by line and keep the text. Whenever you are about to view this video, you have to keep the text with you. See, we are not afraid to die if we can all be together. Gordon Cook and Alan East. In July 1976, my wife Mary, son Jonathan 6, daughter Susanne 7, and I set sail from Plymouth, England to duplicate the round the world voyage made 200 years earlier by Captain James Cook. Okay, what does it mean? In this chapter, the narrator, he himself narrates the story. How he made such a great voyage, he himself narrates. So the narrator narrates his thrilling journey across the sea, that is the called voyage. He wanted to go round the world. He wanted to go round the world, and through voyage by sea. The writer started his round the world voyage when in July 1976. In July 1976. Actually, why he had been motivated for to go for such a rescue voyage? Because he wants to duplicate. Already it had been made by the Great Voyage 200 years ago by Captain James Cook. By Captain James Cook. Actually, the narrator is a descendant of this family. Therefore, he just wants to follow the footprints of the Captain James Cook. He had already achieved. He made round the world through voyage. That great achievement was done 200 years ago. The writer so wants to duplicate, wanted to go around the world. He in July 1976, he started this great voyage. His wife Mary, his son Jonathan, and his daughter Susanne also accompanied him. The son was only just 6 years old and the daughter was 7 years old. At the time, the writer was then a 37 years old businessman. So let me repeat the same. So this story is narrated by the narrator. He wants to go around the world voyage. Okay, that was actually he got motivated from his descendant, that is the Captain James Cook, who had already round the world voyage 200 years ago. So he just wants to duplicate. Therefore, he himself prepared for the world voyage, and then he accompanied his family members also for such a great voyage. Who were accompanied the writer? His wife, his son, and his daughter. Okay, when they started that voyage in July 1976. Okay, follow me, children. At that time he was just 37 years old businessman. He was 37 years old, and his son was just 6 years old boy. His daughter was just 7 years old. His daughter was just 7 years old, and then had dreamt of sailing in the wake of famous explorer. And for the past 16 years, we had spent all our leisure time honing our seafaring skills in British waters. So Honi means perfecting. The son was only 6 years old and the daughter was 7 years old. The writer was 37 years old at the time. He wanted to follow the same route that Captain James Cook had taken 200 years earlier ago. That's important. So he just wants to follow the footprints of the Captain James. He wanted to follow the same route of Captain James Cook. He had done it 200 years ago. For about 16 years, both he and his wife had been dreaming of what the famous explorer had done. So it is not so easy to go around the world through voyage. It is not an easy task. You have to physically, mentally equip for that, because it is a great adventurous journey. Okay, so he made up his mind to face the great challenges he is going to come across in such a great voyage, and he had also decided to follow the routes taken by the great Captain James 200 years ago, and he had the same as a dream. Not only he, but his family members also. For 16 years, both he and his wife had been dreaming, not 1 or 2 years, 16 years, they have been dreaming of what the famous explorer had done. The famous explorer, one who was ready to go for an adventurous sea travel, that is called a voyage explorer. They used to spend all their free time, see the line, 16 years had spent all their leisure time for what? Honing. Honing means perfecting. So, honing, it means perfecting. They have to perfect their skill. All of a sudden, you can't just make such a great journey, because it takes years together and lakhs of miles you have to travel. For that, you have to equip your physically you have to equip. Mentally, you have to equip yourself for to face such challenges which you are going to come across during the great voyage. So, whenever they have free time, during all their free time, lesser time, they perfected. What they perfected? Seafaring skill. Seafaring skill as a sailor. Actually, seafaring skill. Seafaring skill. So, they spent nearly 16 years to perfect the skill required to become a sailor. So when they have decided to go for round the world voyage, they have to equip themselves, isn't it? Okay, children, could you follow me? Yeah. So whenever they have free time, leisure time, at the time and all, they perfected, they had undergone all sorts of training required for to perfect their skill as a sailor in British waters, the sea of British water, as a sailor. So let me repeat the first stanza. I'll give you the sum up of the first stanza. See, actually the narrator, Gordon Gook, decided in his mind to go round the world voyage. Actually, he got that inspiration from Captain James Cook. He had done round the world voyage 200 years ago. So the narrator had decided to follow his footprints. And more than that, he also wanted to follow the same route that Captain James Cook had taken. And therefore, he had prepared himself, and his family members also were ready to go for such a great voyage. His wife, his daughter and his son. For more than 16 years, it had been in their mind as a dream. So they had been perfecting, they had been doing many practices to increase their skill as a sailor. That is called a seafaring skill. Okay, children, the second stanza. So the first stanza says how far they prepared mentally and physically for to face such a great challenge. Okay, second stanza. Our boat Wavewalker, a 23-meter, 30-ton wooden hulled beauty had been professionally built. So for that they had to prepare themselves a Wavewalker. So the writer had decided to see the Wavewalker. See this picture. See, he himself prepared. They made it. They made this. They also named this boat as a, how can they call it? Wavewalker. Wavewalker. Professionally they built this Wavewalker because they had to go for a long sea voyage. So they have to prepare it. Wave, W-A-V, wave walker. Actually, the boat which can float, which can sail smoothly on the waves of the sea and the ocean. With that the meaning, the narrator himself had built a boat which was called a Wavewalker. It was 23 meters. Actually, 23 meters long and 30 ton weight. Actually 30 ton. Wooden hull means at the bottom of the boat they used the wooden plates to resist the waves as well as to resist the force of the current of the water, and it had been professionally built. See this one. See how nicely, what a good effort the writer had taken to build this great boat for his great voyage. He had built it professionally, and nearly they had spent months together to make it. And after making it, they tested it. They fitted it out and testing it in the roughest weather we could find. You see, so the writer, he himself had professionally made this boat for his long sea voyage, and he called this boat as Wavewalker. It was a length of 23 meters and it had a weight of 30 ton, and at the bottom of the sea, colored picture. Actually, English built chapter 2, not after see the title of the lesson they have given. So in this way, they professionally, the writer, the narrator had built this boat for his long sea voyage. Okay, nice children, we will continue. So what does the narrator say in the second stanza? So for his long sea journey and voyage, he himself had built a boat, made a boat, and he called it a Wavewalker. He made it very beautifully, and it had been professionally built. He had taken that much care. Professionally built in the sense means, naturally when a boat is made by the professionalist, how much care they took. In the same manner, the writer also made such a boat professionally built, and we had spent months fitting it out. For months together, they tested the durability. They tested the stability of the boat. How you can test the stability and the durability of the boat? Not just you can't keep it on the seashore. Okay, I kept the boat on the seashore. Now I have tested it. It's durability. You can't just say it. You have to go for sailing in the sea water. It has to be tested in the roughest weather condition. Everything they did it, and finally they have decided this boat was very ready for such a long sea travel and voyage. Okay, just now, then third paragraph. The first leg of our planned 3 years, 105,000 kilometers journey passed pleasantly. Yeah, see, third stanza. Here the writer says, actually the travel was a duration of 3 years. They had planned to make such a great sea voyage for more than 3 years. The first leg of our planned 3 years. Within 3 years, they have to go around the world. Nearly that plan has to cover a distance of 105,000 kilometers. 105,000 kilometers they have to travel. Then only they can go around the world. They can complete their journey. The first part, first leg. When they have started, as I told you already, July. Actually, they had started July 1976. Yeah. So the first part of their journey was very pleasant. Without any weather hazardous, they just smoothly started, and the journey passed pleasantly without any disturbance, without any natural calamities. See, they sailed down peacefully, and we sailed down the west coast of Africa to Cape Town. There, before heading east, we took on two crewmen, American Larry Vigil and Swiss Herb Seigler, to help us tackle one of the world's roughest seas, the Southern Indian Ocean. So what does the writer says in the third stanza? It was a journey of 2,55,000 kilometers. Actually, first part 1,05,000 kilometers. Then second part 1,50,000. So altogether, it has to cover a distance of 2,55,000 kilometers. It has to be covered within a duration of 3 years. They had planned to complete the journey 3 years. So the first leg, the first phase of their planned journey was very pleasant. The first part of the journey, that is 1,05,000 kilometers, was completed pleasantly, that is happily, without any problem. They sailed continued their voyage along the west coast of Africa and reached Cape Town. They started second part of their journey. They continued towards east. Now they have to cross the world roughest sea route, that is the Southern Indian Ocean. Therefore, they have decided to take two more sailors to help them. One was American, actually Larry Vigil. Larry Vigil, actually he is from America. He is an American sailor. And another one, Swiss Herb Seigler. Actually, Swiss Herb Seigler, he is from Swiss. Okay, fine. So, when they are about to cross the world's roughest sea route, that is the southern part of the Indian Ocean, they need someone to help them. So they have decided to took two crewmen. One was American Larry Vigil and another one was Swiss Herb Seigler. So they can go for so smoothly, and more than that, it will help them. Okay, so they decided in such a way to follow. See the third stanza. What does the total of this third stanza? They have to cover a journey of 2,55,000 kilometers. The first phase covers 1,05,000 kilometers. They had planned to complete the journey in 3 years. Okay, the first part of their journey was very pleasant without any problems. They sailed down smoothly the west coast of Africa to Cape Town. So before heading towards the east, that is after completing the first phase, next they have to cross the Indian Ocean. It was the roughest sea route. You know that. Almost all the sailors know that that was the roughest sea route. Often they have to come across the storm, cyclone, and the huge waves, giant waves. They have to face all these problems. Sometimes the sea may be very rough. So they have to face all these problems on their voyage. So to help them, they have decided to take two crewmen to help them. One from America, one from Swiss. So with all these peoples, they set sail towards the east. Okay, can you follow me, children? Okay. So the first part, very important things. See, it's the first three stanzas. What does the narrator says in the first three stanzas? How they have decided, how they have made their boat, when they have started, and who are all the members took part in that. So everything you have to note it down. So the first part of their planned 3 years journey passed pleasantly. They sailed down the west coast of Africa to Cape Town. They took 2 Greek men also with them to help. Okay, and because they have to cross the roughest southern Indian Ocean. Okay, fine. Now, 4th stanza. Let me explain the 4th. If you have any doubts, just note it down. Okay, in the 4th stanza, beyond Cape Town, what happened? Okay. See, on our 2nd day of our Cape Town, we began to encounter strong gales. So it was 2 days after, just 2 days after they had started from Cape Town. What happened? They faced extremely strong wind, that is strong gales. Encounter means faced. Gale means extremely strong wind. Encounter, experienced, faced and met. Such strong winds blew continuously for next few weeks. So, for the next few weeks they blew continuously. Gales did not worry me. But even the sailors, they did not bother about the gales. But then what made them worried? Only the size of the waves, which was alarming, up to 15 meters, as high as our main mast. See, the main mast is here. When their boat Wavewalker, they were sailing smoothly. Suddenly, after the 2 days from the Cape Town, the strong wind they have to encounter, they have to face the strong winds. The wind blown continuously, actually extremely strong wind, and such strong winds blew continuously for next few weeks. The writer was not worried about the strong winds, but he worried only the size of the waves. What worried him then? Only the size, because the waves raised to the height of 15 meters, as high as our main mast. See this boat, the waves raised up to the height of the main mast. So they were afraid of facing such a giant waves. Okay, so in the 4th stanza, what happens? The 4th stanza actually, so suddenly there is the sea just started, the weather starts to become so rough. 2nd day out of the Cape Town, they began to face or encounter strong gales. Here, gale stands for extremely strong wind. Gale means extremely strong wind. Gale, extremely strong wind. So it is quite common whenever the sailors, all sailors have to face these things, the waves, giant waves and strong gales, extremely strong wind. It starts to flow and it blew continuously for next to 2 weeks. They had to face such a rough weather, but even the strong wind did not worry them, did not disturb them much, but only they feared of such a great waves and giant waves, because the waves just started to rise to a height of 15 meters, as high as our main mast, as high as our main mast. Okay, fine. Then December 25th, nearly on the eve of December 25th, they have crossed 3,500 kilometers east of Cape Town. December 25th, where they were nearly 3,500 kilometers. 3,500 kilometers east of Cape Town. East of Cape Town. Okay. So on December 25th, despite atrocious weather, the weather was very atrocious, very worst weather they have to face. We had a wonderful holiday and they have completed with a Christmas tree. So because December 25th night only they have to celebrate their Christmas. And amidst all this rough weather and adverse weather, they have planned to celebrate their Christmas peacefully, because all the family members were in the boat. So when they were there together, they had decided to celebrate the Christmas. We had a wonderful holiday, complete with the Christmas tree. New Year's Day saw no improvement in the weather, but we reasoned that it had to change soon, and it did change for the worse. After celebrating their Christmas, they have planned to celebrate the New Year also on December 25th. Nearly, the weather was terribly bad. That is very important. Atrocious means wicked, very bad. Let me write the meaning for that word. You have to note down in your text itself, children. Atrocious. See? Atrocious. Atrocious weather they had to face. Actually, what does it means? Wicked, very bad. Wicked, very bad weather they had to face. Wicked, very bad. They celebrated and enjoyed Christmas in a wonderful way. They had a Christmas tree. They enjoyed the New Year's Day also in a spirited manner. New Year's Day. But what happens? They hoped that the weather would change soon. They celebrated Christmas with its usual fervor. They celebrated the New Year also. They hoped for the change in the weather condition. Then they can continue their journey without any problem or any difficulty or any inconvenience. But they see what happens, the climate or the weather became worse and worse. But their great disappointment, it changed, the weather changed, but it became worse. Okay, it became more worse than the previous one. So at dawn on January 2nd, what happened? January 2nd, the waves were gigantic. The giant waves starts to rise from the sea. We were sailing with only a small storm zip and were still making 8 knots. As the ship rose to the top of each wave, we could see endless, enormous seas rolling towards us. What happened? On January 2nd, there were huge waves, gigantic waves, mighty waves rose up on the sea. They celebrated their Christmas. They celebrated the New Year also. They were so happy. With such a happy moment, they continued their journey. But to their great disappointment, the situation becomes very worst. The weather became very worst. And see, giant waves started to rise on the surface of the sea water. They have to face such things also. So there were huge waves. The ship rose to the top of each wave. That's quite common. We were sailing with only, they had only small storm zip. Here, just to the storm zip, it is a device which was used actually by the sailors to stop or to reduce zip, a small sail projecting the arm of a crane. Storm zip means just when they used this storm zip, it just reduces the speed of the boat. So it can prevent the boat from tossing by the great and giant waves. Okay, so they had only such a small storm zip only. So a small sail. A small sail. Zip means small sail. Most of the boat they had kept it. In most of the boats and ships they kept this sail. Whenever they have strong wind, whenever they have giant waves, they used to use this sail to make the boat or to prevent the boat from tossing here and there by the giant waves or the wind. Okay, and waves was very giant. They have very small storm zip, still making 8 knots, and ship rose to the top of each wave. So it just started to float. Every wave just rose the boat towards the top. So they felt, what they felt, that they had put up, see, the ship rose to the top. The ship rose to the top of each and every wave. So it made them afraid of seeing the things. And as the ship rose to the top of each wave, we could see endless, enormous seas rolling towards us. So whenever they were rose to the top of the water at each and every wave, what happened? Just the screaming sound of the wind was painful to the ears. So in order to slow down the speed, just they dropped the storm zip also. They secured everything tightly with the ropes, but no use at all. When they were tossed towards the top of each wave, they could see the endless, enormous seas rolling towards us. So the enormous sea water was rose towards the sea. Then they felt that they were engulfed by the enormous sea, because when the wave was very huge and gigantic, they rose up to the top of the water. They felt that the entire sea water was just rolling towards them. They felt like that enormous, very big, gigantic seas. They felt like that, rolling towards their small boat. How can then they face it? And the screaming of the wind, the sound produced by the wind, and the spray. See, the giant waves just sprayed the water on them, was painful to the ears. They can't just bear with such things. So, January 2nd, the waves were gigantic. The sea, they have to face the gigantic waves. They had only small storm zip that they have used, and they dropped, in order to slow down the speed, they just dropped the storm zip. But it was not so much effective to stop the tossing of the boat here and there when the giant waves dashed against such a small boat. When each and every time the wave dashed against the boat, the boat just started to rise to the top of the waves, and each and every time. At the time they felt that the entire sea water was rolling in the form of a giant waves towards them, and the continuous screaming voice of the wind and the spray which was spread out by the giant waves were very painful to the ears. So just to slow the boat down, we dropped the storm zip and lashed a heavy mooring rope in a loop across the Strand. What happens actually, with the help of the rope, they just, the endless sea water rose up a huge giant waves rolling towards them. The roaring sound of the wind was painful to their ears, and the giant waves spray water on them. To slow the boat, they dropped the storm zip, and they secured everything tightly with the ropes. They secured everything tightly. Lashed means fastened. So fasten something with the rope. Here, see the word. Then to slow the boat, they dropped the storm zip and lashed. Here lashed means fastened, and heavy mooring rope. Mooring rope means a rope enables by which a boat is moved. Okay, so with the help of the rope, they just tied up everything. And here stern means the rearmost part of a ship boat. So from the front to the rear, they just tied up everything. They fastened everything with the help of a strong rope. Then we double lashed everything, because due to the strong wind and the giant waves, sometimes the boat may be tossed here and there, or they may be thrown out from the boat. Therefore, just to stop it, to prevent all these things, they fastened a heavy mooring rope, and they made a loop also. With the help of the loops, they just threw it across the back part, that is the rear part of the boat. So now they have fastened everything with the rope tightly. Then we double lashed everything, went through our life, wrapped drill, attached lifelessness, donned oil skins and life jackets. So they kept everything ready. The raft means a flat structure, a piece of timbers fastened together used as a boat or floating platform. So they kept ready the raft. So raft in the sense means a float structure. You might have seen. See, it has been made by pieces of timbers and fastened together, used as a boat or floating platform. Even if they were thrown out of the boat, they can float on the raft. Such they kept ready the raft drill and attached lifelines. Here they secured everything tight with the ropes. They attached lifelines means ropes to their lift rafts. So the rafts were attached. And here also rafts means small, you can also call the raft a small life-saving boats. Then they put on their oil skin and life sockets also. So they were ready now to face the hard situations. And then oil skins and life sockets. So what does the paragraph says? On January 2nd, they faced a huge and giant waves. A roaring waves started to attack the side walls of the boat. So they were sailing only with a small storm zip just to stop the speed of the boat and to save it from the roaring and giant waves. They just installed the storm zip because it just reduced the speed of the boat and see as a ship, but they felt they were just racing towards the top of each and every giant waves. When the boat was just raised to the top of the wave, at the time they felt that the entire sea water was rolling towards them in the form of waves. So it made them to get afraid of such things, and they have never seen such things in their life. The endless, enormous seas. So the entire seas, the sea water just started to raise up and started to roll towards their boat, and the screaming of the wind and the water which was sprayed by the waves, the slow sea, because they spray the water on them. The giant waves spray the water on them. So just to escape, to prevent the boat from toppling down from these things, they just started to fasten with a heavy rope all the things of the boat, from the front to the rear side of the boat. Using a long rope, they fastened it, double fastened it, and the place see, then nothing could be thrown out when the boat was tossed here and there by waves as well as the strong wind. Okay, could you follow me, children? So what the total meaning of this is, of this stanza? On January 2nd there were huge waves. The ship rose to the top of each wave. They had put up only a small sail, that is small zip, in front of their ship just to reduce the speed. The screaming sound of the wind was painful to the ears. In order to slow down the speed, just they dropped the storm zip also. They fastened everything tightly with the ropes. They attached the lifelines, that is the ropes, to their life rafts, small boats, life-saving small boats. Then they put on their oil skins and life sockets. So when the boat was tossed here and there by the giant waves, they had planned to fasten everything with the help of the mooring rope. So they just fastened it, they secured everything tightly with the ropes, and they attached the lifelines, that is the ropes. Lifelines stands for the ropes. See, to slow the boat down, they dropped the storm zip, and last fastened a heavy mooring rope, and they made a loop also. They threw it at the rear of the stern. Then we double lashed everything. They just again fastened and tightened and went through a life raft drill. Here life rafts means small life saving boats. They just attached such boats with a rope, otherwise it may be washed away by the giant waves. Then they were ready to swim on the sea. Suppose even if they were thrown out of the boat, they can swim. For that, what they did, they just put on the life sockets. You might have known about the life sockets. It helps one to float on the surface of the water. Oil skin and life sockets. Oil skin and life sockets. So they were ready. Now, next, the first indication of impending disaster came at about 6 p.m. with an ominous silence. The first indication of impending disaster came at about 6 p.m. with an ominous silence means the wind dropped and the sky immediately grew dark. So it was perfectly silent. The wind just dropped, and the sky immediately grew dark. So all of a sudden, the wind stopped. So it was very surprised to see. So that was an indication of impending disaster. Impending means the fourth coming, the coming disaster they are going to face. That is called impending, waiting, coming, impending, coming soon. Already they had faced giant waves and roaring winds also. They have tossed here and there by such things, but anyhow they had managed to cross such giant waves as well as the wind. And again another indication. What was the indication? Impending disasters means the great disaster things going to happen, the things which cause for the destruction, that is called a disaster. And around 6 p.m. ominous silence, perfect silence. Okay, ominous means bad silent. It was very bad and ill, the silent. The wind suddenly dropped and the sky grew so dark. Then came a growing roar and an enormous cloud towered above the ship. With horror, I realized that it was not a cloud but a wave like no other I had ever seen. Then suddenly it happened. Then came a growing roar. Suddenly they heard a roaring sound. They just looked at the sky. It became so dark. And they thought that a thick cloud is going to cover. A thick cloud, enormous cloud is going to tower off the ship with horror. But what happens? I realized that it was not a cloud but a giant waves. He had never seen it in his lifetime. About 6 p.m. there was a dreadful silence. The wind stopped blowing and the sky grew dark. Then there was a growing roar. They heard a roaring sound. A huge cloud was seen close to the back of the ship. They were sailing. Then they viewed a dark cloud came very close to the back of their boat. The wind dropped and the sky immediately grew dark. Then came a growing roar, the sound they heard, and an enormous cloud, big, painful, and giant cloud came towards the aft of the ship, means at the back of the ship. With the horror, what they realized, that it was not a cloud. But first they thought that a huge cloud is formed in the sky and it has just covered the top of the boat. They thought it, but then only they realized the dark shadow was not a cloud but it was a giant waves. Such a giant waves had never seen by them. It appeared perfectly vertical and almost twice the height of the other waves, with a frightful breaking crest. How to see? It was not a cloud, it was a terrible wave, almost twice the height of the other waves. The height of the giant wave, it was higher. The height was, see, twice than the height of the other waves. It appeared perfectly vertical. See, the giant waves appeared perfectly vertical. See, this is the boat. Here the giant waves form. It just rose up in this position vertical. So the length of the wave is higher than any other waves, or better you can say its length is, or its height is twice than the other waves. So such a giant waves had never been witnessed by the narrator as well as his family members. So I had never seen it appeared perfectly vertical. The waves just rose up vertically, and almost twice, the wave was almost twice the height of the other waves. It was very frightful and breaking crust. So it was just, crust means to the top. See the crust, it was the crust. The wave just raised just to break the crust of the boat. To that extent, with a great force, the wave just rose up vertically. Its height was twice than the height of the other waves. So it frightened them very much. You just imagine, children, when we are making such a great voyage, at that time, if we are tossed by such a giant waves as well as the roaring wind, how much you get afraid? Nearly. In the same way, the entire family members got afraid of such a giant waves as well as the roaring wind. They didn't realize what would happen. So the first indication, that was an impending disaster, because something bad, something evil is going to happen. The indication was the giant waves, ominous silence, bad silence was prevailing. So the silence, the bad silence or ill silence was considered as an indicator. Something bad is going to happen, something evil is going to happen. That was indicated by the ominous silence, the bad silence. All of a sudden, the wind was also dropped and the sky became so dark. So these people looked at the sky. Why all of a sudden the sky became so dark? A thick cloud was formed in the sky. They thought that the dark cloud is formed in the sky. And then when it approaches very close towards the boat, then only they realized it was not the giant or big or dark cloud, but it was a giant wave which came very close towards the back of the ship. Very giant wave. So they came growing roar, and an enormous cloud, they thought, towered means covered, just to the top, covered after the ship, just the top of the ship, with the horror, frightened vision. I realized that it was not the cloud. Then only they realized, but a wave. They had never seen such giant waves in their lifetime. It appeared perfectly vertical. The sea, it appeared just vertically. Once again, let me explain it with the help of this diagram, the chart. See, it appeared vertically here like this. And it was about to break the mast of the boat. To that extent, it raised. That was the height of the giant waves. That was the height of the giant waves. Could you see, children? See this picture, how the boat was tossed by the giant waves and the roaring waves and the sea gale. Yeah. So with the horror, I realized it was not a cloud but a wave like no other. They had never seen such a giant waves. It appeared perfectly vertical and almost twice the height of the other waves. Yeah, with a frightful breaking crust. It just dashed against the top of the boat. Next stanza. The roar increased to a thunder as the stern moved up the face of the wave, and for a moment I thought we might ride over it. So what happens? See, the roar changed into thunder. The roaring sound suddenly changed, increased to a thunder. Means you might have heard the ear-blowing voice of the thunder during the rainy season. You can see the lightning on the clouds and you can hear the thunder voice. It's a very huge and frightening. So slowly the roar increased to a thunderbolt sound. And more than that, what happens next? So then came a growing roar and a very huge wave. A tremendous explosion shook the deck. The narrator's head struck on the wheel and he flew over the side of the boat into water. See, the roar increased to be a thunder and the stern moved up the face of the wave. So they cannot just face it. See, and for a moment I thought we might ride over it. When the boat was just raised up by the giant waves, they thought that they were traveling just above, moved up the face of the wave. They became very close to the face of the wave. And for a moment I thought we might ride over it. They realized that they were traveling on the face of the giant waves. But then a tremendous explosion shook the deck. The wave just slashed against the wall of the boat. It struck the boat at the greatest speed. So there was a dreadful explosion that shook the deck. It just lashed heavily against the deck of the boat, the giant waves. So, but when a tremendous, very huge explosion, the bursting sound shook the deck. A torrent of green and white water broke over the ship. When the giant wave struck against, a torrent of the water broke over the ship. The giant waves dashed against the wall of the boat and then it just broke over the wall of the ship. Then the sea water just entered the boat. The writer's head smashed into the steering wheel. Next to see a torrent of green and white water. The sea water just entered the boat, broke over the ship. Because when the giant wave just when the giant waves just dashed against the wall of the boat, the sea water just started to enter the boat. See, it made some holes. It had broken some parts of the wall. Through that broken wall, the sea water just entered into the boat. But it was very dangerous. Once this full sea water just started to enter into that boat, means the boat will sink. That's all. So know that I had ever seen. And ship, my head, water broke over the ship. When the giant waves just dashed against the wall of the boat, his head smashed into the wheel. He was steering the wheel, so his head dashed against the wheel. And I was aware of flying overboard and sinking below the waves. He was thrown out. So steering the wheel, he was thrown overboard. The narrator was thrown overboard. He was aware that he was sinking below the waves. When he was thrown out from the boat, he was just about to sink into the waves, and he felt it, flying overboard and sinking below the waves. He accepted my approaching death. He accepted the fact that his end was nearing. Almost he was going to die when he was thrown out, but fortunately he had fastened a strong rope with the boat, so it helped him. And he was slowly he was losing his consciousness, and he felt quite peaceful. See, and as I was losing his consciousness, when he was thrown out from the boat on the board, he thought that he was almost nearing death. He was going to sink. He was going to sink in the sea water, and he felt quite peaceful. It happened. So, a giant waves rose up, and it rose up to the top of the mast of the boat. At the moment, they thought that they were just traveling, they were riding over it. But suddenly they heard a heavy explosion. That sound was made when a huge and giant waves lashed against the side wall of the boat. It was broken. Then the sea water just started to enter into the boat. Not all these things, here and there, through the small damage made by the giant waves on the wall of the boat, sea water just started to enter. At the same time, his head dashed against the steering wheel, and he was thrown out he was thrown, the narrator was thrown out into the sea water, and he thought that he was slowly, he realized that he was going to sink in the sea water. He was aware that he was sinking below the waves. He accepted the fact that his end was very near. He was losing consciousness, and he felt quite peaceful. Okay, children, I would like to stop up to this level, the first part. We will continue the remaining part in the second class. So far now, what you have learned, just let me give you the summary. So in July 1976, the narrator, a 37-year-old businessman, his wife Mary, 6-year-old son Jonathan, and a 7-year-old daughter Susanne, set sail from the Plymouth, where they have started the journey. Plymouth, that is a port in England. They wished to go round the world. They wished to go round the world on a long sea journey, as Captain James Cook had done 200 years earlier. They started actually in 23-meter, 30-ton wooden-hulled boat named Wavewalker. So they had planned to go around the world, and they want to duplicate the same thing had done by the Captain James Cook 200 years ago. His family members accompanied him, and they had made a special boat that is called Wavewalker, and they started their first journey. From the Plymouth, a port of England. Okay, and they wished to go around the world. The first part of their planned 3 years journey was very pleasant. 105,000 kilometers journey passed pleasantly. They sailed down the west coast of Africa to Cape Town. They took on 2 crewmen, Larry Vigil, an American, and Herb Sage, a Swiss, to help them cross the roughest southern Indian Ocean. On their second day out of Cape Town, they faced extremely strong winds, which blew continuously for next few weeks. Waves rose up to 15 meters. On December 25th, they were 3,500 kilometers east of Cape Town. Though the weather was very bad, they enjoyed Christmas and New Year's Day. The weather changed for the worse. On January 2nd, there were mighty waves. They were sailing at 8 knots. They slowed down the boat by dropping the small sail and fastened mooring rope in a loop across the hind part of the boat. Then they attached lifelines, put on the waterproof clothes and life jackets, and waited for the storm. The first sign of the imminent disaster came as a portentous silence. The wind dropped and the sky immediately grew dark. Then came a growing roar and a very huge wave. A tremendous explosion shook the deck. The narrator's head struck on the wheel, and he flew over the side of the boat into water. He was sinking below the waves. He accepted his coming death. Okay, so children, look here. Just so far now we have covered 7 to 8 paragraphs. First 8 paragraphs so far now we have covered. Just to go through the paragraphs, and you can easily understand what happened when they have started, where they went down on the sea, what were the situations they had to come across. Everything you can learn, and then we will continue the remaining things in the next video class. Thank you, children. Have a nice day.